There's the man with the master plan. And there's Sally. How both of y'all doing? You're on mute, Stephanie.
Pretty good.
What's up, Sally? You're on mute too.
Hi, how are you guys? I'm just getting home. I'll be right with you, okay?
Okay, no problem.
All right.
I saw your announcement on LinkedIn.
Good.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the CFO announcement.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was what you were talking about before, Voltron?
Yep, that was it. Or that is it. So, let me stop. Pause. Or is it already recording?
I just started the record.
Okay. All right. So this is the out-of-state investing or out-of-state real estate investing webinar on August the 18th. Each session is a little bit different because I will focus on different topics according to the audience. And so here we have a mixture of people who have dabbled or are dabbling in owning real estate and using different techniques, whether it's land banking, which basically means that you're buying vacant lots at a very low price because there's no development around them, but you are banking on the fact that you expect development to come through your way over a 10, 20-year period, which will can significantly increase the value of your vacant lot. I live in the Antelope Valley. I've lived up here since 1994. I know a lot about land banking because this is probably one of the most speculative areas in California, mainly because of the airport. So starting in the 80s and 90s, you had investors that would come up here and buy vacant lots because LAX, or the company that owns LAX, the airport, also LAX is landlocked. It cannot expand. And so everyone expects that the airport up here will expand. And over the last couple of decades, the company that owns LAX has bought up all the property. And so there were speculators who got paid. The big one now is solar, right? The Antelope Valley is the solar capital of the United States. There are billion-dollar projects out here, and people are buying lots. I work with a company that is in the process of buying a 5.5-acre lot. And I can tell you what I believe the original numbers were. So the company we're buying it for, they probably got this 5 acres for around $10,000, however many years ago. And now they're selling it to us for almost 100,000, right? So that's 10x their investment. Now, we'll either hold on to it and expect for it to increase. It may or may not increase 10x, but probably around 3 to 5x. We would be looking at selling it. The other option is to keep it and develop it. Throw a solar farm on it. Because of its proximity, it's right. It is right next to one of Southern California Edison's major distribution lines. So proximity-wise, and it's not landlocked, so it has access to actual roads. So it's it's a prime property. It's just small. It's only 5 acres. Um, but
So
that is,
can you
but
recap that, Mr. Evans?
sure.
You bought it for 100,000. Somebody bought it for 10, then you bought it for 100.
Yeah. So I suspect that the company we're buying it from bought it for around $10,000, however many years ago that they bought it, because they bought it either before there were no solar farms or when solar farms were just starting. So they got it extremely cheap. It's extremely cheap. And so now we come through, you know, 5.5 acres for $100,000 in the path of development. Those are the key words, in the path of development. And so the company I represent believes, hey, it's a good investment because the worst case scenario is we'll develop it, right? Um, and so our play is like a 2 to 3 year play. We'll see if it appreciates significantly during that time. If not, we'll come up with a plan to actually develop um, because the company I'm with is also very big in energy storage through batteries. Okay. Um, and so that's one strategy, right? I'll tell you a little bit about my personal story with real estate. Um, I've been in real estate. I was an active real estate investor from 1997 to 2005. Um, I bought my first house in 1997, and I got paid $15,000 to buy it.
Wow.
And I'll briefly tell you how that worked out. I graduated college from Loyola Marymount University with a degree in economics um, in '94. Married my college sweetheart. We were both making great money at that time, and so we said, we're going to live it up. We're going to live it up. We're both in our early 20s. Wait until we get in our late 20s or our 30s to start saving. Well, she got pregnant in 1997, and so everything changed. And in my mind, I was like, I need to buy a house, but I have not saved up any money. Um, Looked at the newspaper because the internet really wasn't a thing yet, and saw an ad in the newspaper that said 4 bedroom, 2 bath house in East Palmdale, 1,500 square feet for $110,000 FHA assumable loan. Now, I didn't know what FHA was, right? So it was for sale by owner. So I contacted the owner. He said, Mike, I'm a bachelor. My mom lives up in the area, but she wants to move. Now you have to understand, 1997 was the bottom of a recession that started in 1989 when all of the military bases were closing throughout the United States. Antelope Valley was hit hard, so home prices took a dive. He said, Mike, my house is worth 110,000, but I owe 130,000, so I'm underwater. He said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a final payment of $20,000 to the bank. That'll bring the balance down to 110. You can then assume the loan, which means just qualifying and taking over the loan. Once you get the loan, you can refinance. I said, dude, I can easily make your house payment. I'm not worried about that. But if you have $20,000 that you're ready to give to the bank, look at here. Instead of giving it to the bank, just give me $15,000. You get to save $5,000. I get $15,000 in cash. I get to pay off all my debt, rearrange my cash flow, knowing that I need to stay in the house for around 5 years before it's no longer underwater. And so that's how I got paid $15,000 to buy somebody else's house. It's called creative finance. Um, and there's a couple more stories, but I'm going to save them for another webinar. I've owned 3 properties and I've never used a penny of my own money ever to buy property. I just keep rolling equity to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and using leverage. So, um, So since there are a bunch of strategies, one of the strategies is when you live in a state like California, where property values are sky high, rents compared to those values are low. There's not a lot of good investment opportunities here in California that are low risk, high reward. Okay. Now, California traditionally is great for flipping houses, right? Where the appreciation, as long as the appreciation goes up, and you can buy it at buy a distressed property at a discount, rehab it, and then sell it at a higher price. Hey, you can make lots of money flipping homes in California. It's really on both of those coasts. Both of the coasts are great for um, property appreciation and flipping houses. The Midwest traditionally has been good for renting houses and cash flow. And one of the metrics that is used is the rent to price ratio. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And so if you're in California and you want a low risk, high reward investment, and you know they're in the Midwest, how do you go about becoming an out of state investor? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen and I'm going to go through a couple of presentations pretty quick, but you are able to stop and ask me a question at any time. Just raise your hand and then Stefan will unmute you. So where are we at? Slideshow from the beginning. All right. So out of state real estate investing. Why is this thing not working? All right. So this is a strategic approach for enhanced returns. A little bit about me. I got 30 years developing and managing complex operational and financial systems, mainly for the government. I spent 4 years as a CFO for Santa Barbara County's mental health department, where I managed a $106 million annual budget. And I spent 2 years as a contract CFO for a nonprofit in Santa Barbara, where I was responsible for an $11.5 million endowment. So between my training in economics with Loyola Marymount, my practical real estate investing since '97, and my professional experience of managing hundreds of millions of dollars. I took all of that and decided, you know what, it's time for me to create my own real estate investment management company. And my goal is to allow the average person with as little as $120 a year to earn the same type of returns as far as what they call ROI, return on investment, which is a percentage, to earn the same returns that rich people do. All right, so real estate investment basics. We're going to talk about cash on cash, return on investment. We're going to talk about cash flow. Then we're going to talk about some of the advantages of out-of-state opportunities. So I got a quick video. It's like 2 or 3 minutes for you to watch. This is from Bigger Pockets, which is the largest real estate social media platform. If you're not part of biggerpockets.com, go and join. It's 100% free. It is the best education that you can get for free on real estate. And let's make sure that I've got the video and the audio set up. Share sound, and let's start.
I oftentimes say when I'm talking about real estate deals, I often say I'm looking for two different metrics that I care about more than anything. So one of those is called cash on cash return. All right, cash on cash return. The other one is just total cash flow. Don't mind my terrible handwriting. So those two things I care about more than almost anything else, right? Which makes sense. So cash and cash return is what percentage of my investment am I making back every single, what percent of my money am I making back every single year in profit from the cash flow? And cash flow is like a dollar amount. How much per month am I actually making? Now, I oftentimes say that cash on cash return, I aim for a 10 to 12%. That's what I want for a cash on cash return. And I aim for between $100 and $200 a month in cash flow per unit. Now, the question was that I just got on a webinar is, what if the actual dollar amount looked pretty good, like achieved, like let's say I was getting $200 on a single family house, we'll call it, right? Let's say I was making 200 bucks, but I was only getting a 5% return. Would I do that? Great question. So here's how I look at that. If I'm just getting started and I'm trying to buy my very first deal and I'm only getting a 5% return, and I know that I'm gonna have more money where that came from, I would probably do it just to start building momentum, as long as I was really confident in that number. Because I believe in the beginning, momentum is more important than your actual return on a single investment. The knowledge and experience you gain. Now that said, I would normally say the cash on cash return number, the percentage, is more important than your dollar amount. Now, why do I have two of those numbers? It's because without using both those metrics, you can manipulate it. For example, what if I had a property that was making me $200 per month, but that fits my metric, right? But it cost me $10 million to buy that property. That would be a horrible deal, right? So that would be a super low, like a 0.0001% cash to cash return. Now, on the other hand, what if I had a property that was giving me a 50% return on investment? Whoa, that's really good. But that just might mean I put $2 into the deal because it was almost a no money down deal, and I made back only $1 the entire year. I was making back like 8 cents a month. That's a horrible deal, right? I don't want to make 8 cents a month. That's why I want both these things. Now, generally speaking, I care more about my percentage return than I do my cash flow number, but I would like to have both those hit my metrics. But again, I would be willing on an early deal just to build momentum to go a little bit lower than that. So hope that helps answer that question. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me the thumbs up below the video. And I guess follow me, us, Bigger Pockets, on everywhere at Bigger Pockets, and me personally at Beardy Brandon over on Instagram. Thanks, y'all.
So, can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If you take nothing else out of this webinar, it is the information that Brandon talked about when it comes to cash on cash, ROI, and cash flow. And so when we talk about out-of-state investing, and if you're in California, if you're in New York, or on the East Coast, you are going to have or make higher cash on cash ROI in the Midwest. And so the way that you calculate, you just take your annual pre-tax cash flow and you divide it by the total cash that's invested, and then multiply that by 100. And so I got some concrete examples. So I live in the Antelope Valley. I live in Lancaster, typical house up here, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, $500,000 home, and you can rent it up here for $3,000 a month. Now, if I'm financing this and I'm putting 20% down, that means I'm putting $100,000 down, plus I got closing costs, so let's say around $10,000. So that equals $110,000 total cash invested. So what is my annual, what is my pre-tax cash flow? We're gonna look at it on a monthly basis first and multiply it by 12. Well, so you start with your gross rent, $300. And then you need to subtract your mortgage. So in this instance, I got a $400,000 mortgage. I think I calculated the interest rate at 7% amortized over 30 years. And the mortgage came out to 2661. Now you got to take away your operating costs. Operating costs for rentals are property taxes, property insurance, and property management fees. If you're doing property management, if you have a professional property manager, they typically charge 10%, which means on $3,000 a month, they're going to charge $300. And so when you just add that to the mortgage, you're basically at what the rent amount is. And we haven't paid insurance and we haven't paid taxes yet. So what you wind up doing is you wind up getting a negative cash on cash ROI. Never, ever, 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 ever do a real estate investment where the cash flow is negative. Now, you will hear people say, well, it's such a great deal. I know it's going to appreciate, so I can deal with the negative cash flow. From a risk management perspective, that is a bad investment. Okay. And so fundamentally, never, ever, ever invest in a real estate deal where the cash flow is going to be negative. Walk away. There are other deals that are better where you will always get positive cash flow. So let's use the example of Detroit. So my company manages real estate deals on behalf of investors. We only do it in the city of Detroit because that city has the best rental market and cash flowing market in the United States. So we're going to look at a typical house in the hood of Detroit. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,000 square foot. You can buy that house for about $50,000, $48,000, and then a couple $1,000 in closing costs. So, and we're going to look at an all cash investment, right? So you're in for $50,000, but you'll be able to rent that property for $1,000 a month. And I'm going to overstate the operating costs. And when we get to the property that we're currently selling equity in, we'll get into some real numbers so you can see what operating costs are. But to make the numbers easy, I overinflated the operating cost to $375 a month, which means your cash flow is $625 a month. Well, that's $7,500 a year. Do the calculation, 7,500 divided by 50,000 is 15%. If you remember in the video, he said your cash on cash ROI target should be low double digits, 10 to 12%, and your cash flow per unit should be around $200 per month. Now, and assuming that you're using financing, okay? This is just using all cash. When you use finance, or when you use loans, you're basically using leverage. When you use leverage, you amplify your ROI percentage based on the leverage applied. So for example, if you have leverage, again, $100,000 property, you put down 20%, so you put down 20,000, you're using leverage of 5 to 1. Your ROI is going to be 5 times greater, approximately, than what it would have been if you would have done all cash. Okay. So just looking here, you got positive cash flow compared to California with negative cash flow. And I can tell you this, I'm in the Antelope Valley, one of the least or lesser expensive places in California. You go down into the basin, Los Angeles, where you got $1 million houses and they're bringing in, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month in rent. That cash on cash on the ROI is even a larger negative number. So any questions so far on cash on cash ROI and why it's important.
Mr. Evans, I know people, it's not good, like you said. I agree with you. They bought property in Inglewood and it was kind of negative, and now I guess they're getting a lot of positive returns. I guess that's a unique case.
No, it's not. So it's called speculation. It's not unique. It's very similar to land banking, right? So if prior to the announcement of the SoFi Stadium, if someone said, "Hey, Inglewood has low property values. I'm gonna buy some properties here. Um, I may not have positive cash flow, but I've got enough cash reserves to where I can handle it for the next few years because I think development is coming." And then boom, right? Here comes new SoFi Stadium. Here comes new Intuit Stadium, and home appreciation or property values go sky high, right? Um, Now, let's say if that would have been 2007, what happened in 2008?
We had a crash.
Exactly. And so this is the thing about speculation, right? It's speculative. It's high risk. I I don't believe in taking high risk. I believe in managing and shifting risk, right? Because no risk, no reward. But you want to have strategies for managing and shifting risk in order to get those double digit returns. Um, and I can tell you now, in the Midwest, there are so many opportunities. Right? We focus on Detroit because we have a system, we've got boots on the ground, and it's just like low hanging fruit. There are thousands, and I'm not exaggerating when I say thousands of properties that meet our criteria. Where for $50,000, you're going to get $1,000 a month in rent, and you're going to make at least $7,500 a year in net operating income. You're going to get a 15% ROI. You can't get a 15% ROI in California, unless you're doing it purely by appreciation. What I showed you is just based on the cash flow. We haven't even talked about the appreciation in Detroit. Historically, the East and West Coast, those properties made their money by appreciation, and the Midwest made its money by cash flow. Well, everything changed in COVID since COVID, and the supply chain has been messed up. So because of 2008, where home builders did not build as much and as quickly, and then we had COVID, which messed up the supply chain, the appreciation in the Midwest is it rivals the appreciation on the coast. I can tell you the properties that we focus on. I'll just give you some examples. We started looking at this in January of 2001. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,000 square foot houses. At that time, you could buy a distressed property and rehab it for $25,000, and you could rent it for $500 a month. Now we jump 3 years later, the same property is now worth $50,000. So you just turned 25 into 50, and the cash flow just went from 500 to 1,000. So double the value, double the cash flow. There's not another market in the United States that has done that. And that's why we picked Detroit. Is it going to continue to do that? No. But there are specific zip codes in Detroit that continue to appreciate at double-digit annual rates. And that's the thing is finding the right properties, and there are literally thousands of them in Detroit. So let's talk about the next advantage is lower cash investment. So the median price house in California is $860,000 as of last month. In Florida is $415, and Texas is $340. Well, we've already talked about the houses that we focus on in Detroit, $50,000 all in. Well, unless you got $860,000 sitting around, you're gonna need to get a loan. Okay. And so as investment loans, you're typically going to put down 20 to 30%, but we use a 20% number and we allocate 2% for costs, which means you buy the median house in California, you're going to be in for about 200,000. In Florida, you're going to be in about 100,000. And in Texas, it's going to be about $75,000 each, compared to Detroit, where it's $50,000. So if you have $200,000 cash, what can you get? Well, in California, you can get one house that you can probably rent for about $4,000 a month. And so your cash flow is going to be $4,000 a month minus the mortgage on the balance of that $860,000. In Florida, you can get about two houses that rent out about $3,000 each, so you get $6,000. But again, you got to take into account the mortgages. And in Texas, you'll get two houses, plus you'll still have $50,000 in cash left, $4,000 a month, but you got to take into account the mortgages. In Detroit, for $50,000 and no mortgage, you get $1,000 for each house. So for $200,000, you can get four houses. So now you got $4,000 a month with no mortgages. That's how your cash flow increases significantly, which impacts your cash on cash ROI. So lower cash investment. Now, it does require you to have better money management tools, right? You're out of state. You can't go check on the property. You need to have reliable boots on the ground. That is number one. It took us 2 years to establish the right relationships with people that we could trust and people who had systems in order for us to find the right boots on the ground. And if you're building a portfolio, unless you want to be a portfolio manager, you're going to need someone who can manage your portfolio. Remote property management services. You're looking for property management companies that have great systems and great communication systems. You've got some companies that are using what's called prop tech. This is technology in property management that's really cutting edge. And good financial planning and cash flow management, right? We've talked about cash on cash ROI, and we've talked a little bit, but not explicitly, about the rent to price ratio. So the rent to price ratio is a statistic that you can calculate that says what's the average monthly rent divided by the average cost of a property, okay? And so this is as of last month. The higher the ratio, the more cash a property throws off, more free cash. So number one is Jackson, Mississippi, right? Then we got Montgomery, Baltimore, Toledo, there's Detroit, Cleveland, Shreveport, Dayton, Kansas City, and Peoria. You will see the top 10 are all in the Midwest. And I can tell you that basically throughout the entire Midwest, just follow the Mississippi. And then there are some cities in the South where the rent to price ratio is just astronomical. Our goal is a 2% rent to price ratio, and we found that in Detroit. And then you got to have better risk management tools. When you're out of state, it can be out of sight, out of mind, and it's easier to get hustled, right? This is where you got to have good systems and trust but verify. And don't put all your eggs in one basket. You don't put all your eggs with one team on the ground. So even though we deal with a primary real estate company called Great Lakes Property Management, and they've been in business since '06, they have more than 300 properties in their portfolio that they manage, mainly for out-of-state investors, and of the 300 plus, more than 40 are their own properties, right? So even though they're a great company, we still verify things with other people that we have on the ground, okay? Make sure that they're Great Lakes is doing the job they're supposed to do. Diversification as a risk management strategy. So, for example, with that $200,000 in cash that you had, you can only get one house in California, but you can get 4 houses in Detroit. And so, in California, if something goes wrong with that one property, it affects your entire cash flow. If you have 4 properties in Detroit and one goes wrong, it only affects 25% of your cash flow. You need to understand the different regulations in each state, which states are landlord friendly versus tenant friendly. Understand what's the eviction process, how long does it take? And then the last thing is insurance and reserves. So, got to have property insurance. Basically, it's landlord's property insurance, fire and stuff like that. And then you need to set aside part of your profits to go into a reserve account. And these are the 3 things that it needs to cover: the maintenance costs, a vacancy rate. So when a tenant leaves, you're going to need to do what's called turning the property. You may have to paint, you may have to change the walls according to what the wear and tear is. You have to get it back into new rentable state. And then CapEx, which stands for capital expenditures. That has to do with the systems of the house, the air conditioning, the furnace, the water pipes, electricity, the roof, right? According to the age of the property, you need to set aside money to eventually replace those. So in conclusion, and again, I really want you guys to really focus on the cash on cash return, ROI, and the cash flow, and understanding the advantages of investing out of state. And with that, that is the primary presentation that we have. Do you guys have any questions before we move on to the next topic? Nope. Everybody understand the importance of cash on cash ROI and cash flow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's pretty critical to make sure you have that cash on cash. Yeah, yeah.
Janet,
I'm just wondering about Detroit as a city and the speculative. Are there jobs there? Are there going to be more jobs in Detroit? Are companies investing back in Detroit? What makes it a good place to go?
and that's the next topic that we're going to cover. Why Detroit? So we're about to
Oh,
get
okay.
Janet, I know you said, hey, a lot of this is new to me. What's your feedback so far?
Yeah, it's a lot of new information for me. It's taking me a little bit of time to process it. I understand the general idea of the importance of it, but I'd have to sit and read through on my own time. So I'm not gonna slow down the webinar, but yeah,
Yeah, and
I'll ask you questions later.
and this is an introduction, and it is a lot of information.
Right.
And I will be sending out the presentation so that you have
Oh, that's
reference.
amazing. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's get into why Detroit, and we'll go through this one pretty quick. Okay. So we already talked about why becoming an out-of-state real estate investor, but why Detroit specifically? So We believe that it's the best single family rental market for a couple of reasons. So one is the rent to price ratio, right? You saw that it's number 5 on the list. But in addition to it generating a lot of cash flow, there are a lot of properties available. So there are 70,000 vacant lots and boarded up homes in the city of Detroit that are owned by a single government entity called the Detroit Land Bank Authority. Okay, you can go to the website right now, and with your credit card, you can put in a bid to buy a house for $1,000. Now, it's going to be a junk house. You have to tear it down and build it back up, and it's going to cost you about $50,000 to do that if you know the right people. If you don't know the right people, it's going to cost you $75,000 to $80,000. Okay, and so the sheer number of properties, Detroit by far exceeds anybody else. Okay, and then you got to be strategic about what do you choose and where do you choose. So we've narrowed it down to the top 5 zip codes that have a lot of inventory, but have been appreciating at more than 10% per year in the last couple of years. And we're still able to get that rent to price ratio. So it's like, the best of both worlds. And what we do specifically is we create turnkey, affordable housing rental properties, right? Basically Section 8 housing. There's not enough Section 8 housing in Detroit. It is literally the lowest hanging fruit. And so for a $50,000 investment, give us around 3 months, we'll find the right property and negotiate the right purchase price using our risk management tool, which is called the Real Estate Bill Management System. When we put in the address, and it looks like the zip code, we put in how much we think we can rent the property for per month, what the projected rehab is, and how long it will take. It'll come back. It'll give us a maximum purchase price in order for the indicator to be deal. And there's some fields that we can change, and the indicator will either say deal or no deal. If it says no deal, then you need to renegotiate. If you can't renegotiate, you pass that one on and you move on to the next one. And so it takes the emotion out of it. This is a game, okay? And so I tell people, especially from LA, that the inner city of Detroit is very much like the inner city of LA after the riots. And so anybody who has been in LA for the last 20, 30 years knows that the inner city of Los Angeles has become gentrified. We talked about the example of Inglewood, right? And so let me tell you what happened with Detroit. So back in the 50s, Detroit was one of the top 10 cities in population, had 2.5 million people. Last year, they had a little bit under 700,000. So there's been a mass exodus for decades leaving Detroit. It got so bad that what they started doing is the city government didn't have enough revenue in order to provide services. So they increased property tax. Well, when you increase property tax and people already don't have jobs, the people lose their houses. And so it did not solve the problem for Detroit of raising revenue. It just gave them a bunch of houses that were foreclosed upon. And the problem got so bad that Detroit started bulldozing houses and turned them back into vacant lots, because that was more cost efficient from a maintenance perspective than trying to maintain boarded up houses that then turned into places for crime. Okay. So at one time, the Detroit Land Bank Authority had 100,000 vacant lots and boarded up homes. In 2013, they filed for the largest municipal bankruptcy at that time. They came out of bankruptcy 2014, 2015. And then Trump signed the Opportunity Act in 2017 that created opportunity zones. These are areas designated by state governors where investors get incredible tax benefits. And I'll have to wait another day to talk about those tax benefits. But bottom line is, I don't know why I always forget his name, but he's the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He came in and started buying up properties in Detroit's downtown and riverfront for pennies on the dollar, sold them to developers, and started rebuilding Detroit. Detroit has one of the newest downtowns and one of the newest riverfronts of any place, definitely in the United States, but in the world. They've got brand new sports arenas. They've, the downtown is class A. And then what they did for people who wanted to, live close to where they were, they started developing in what they call the mid-city, the areas right around downtown. Well, those cities traditionally were Black, and so they got gentrified. And then they kind of skipped over the inner city and they went beyond 8 Mile and started playing in the suburbs, right? And in 2021, no one had really seriously invested significantly in the inner city. Well, that is starting to change. In the last year or two, you have people from the Middle East that are coming in with hundreds of millions of dollars buying up rental properties. Because in ROI, that's higher than what they can get in the Middle East, okay? And the Detroit area, actually it's a city of Hamtramck, has the highest number of Middle Easterns in the United States, okay? And so now the city is being revitalized because of electric vehicles. The car companies are transitioning to electric vehicles, and the city is diversifying beyond just being a car manufacturing city. Quicken or Rocket Mortgage is headquartered there, and there's a couple of other large financial institutions that are located there. But our niche is affordable housing, specifically Section 8. And when we build a turnkey Section 8 rental property, and Section 8 money is guaranteed money from the government, right? There was a lot of small landlords during COVID when the first time in U.S. history, you as a landlord could not evict your tenant who was not paying you rent and replace them with somebody else who would, right? You had the moratorium. And so a lot of landlords went bankrupt because they didn't have, they never planned for that. They never had a risk management tool. They didn't have enough reserves. And so if you were a Section 8 landlord, though, you didn't miss a payment. And so we focus on third-party government payers, Section 8, VA, social services. Now, per the Fair Housing Act, you can't discriminate. But the relationship that we have with Great Lakes Property Management, and because they've been doing this for so long, they know how to properly screen people. And what we do is we go into Class C neighborhoods, we build Class B properties in order to attract and retain Class A Section 8 tenants. So there are some strategies that we use and that Great Lakes Property Management uses to manage and shift risk. We manage all aspects of the real estate deal. Entire process takes 3 to 6 months. We charge 2% of the purchase price, 2% of the rehab budget. And if you decide to sell the property within our network, we charge a 2 to 4% sales fee. But here's the thing, we put our money where our mouth is, and we provide what's called a preferred rate of 10%. So we make our money on the back end just like you do. And we're so confident that our system works and that we're going to make money that we say, okay, you get 100% of the profit of up to 10% of your investment. So if you invest $50,000, you're going to get the first $5,000. Everything after that, we split 50-50. And so we are a performance-based company because we're extremely confident in what we do. We don't like to work for free, and we do like to make a profit. And by doing the profit sharing on the back end, whether it's you keeping the property and renting it, or selling the property, or selling some of the equity in it, we both have the same objectives. So how much can you make as a traditional investor? So again, if you invest $50,000, and we also recommend you have another $5,000 for contingencies, and we talked about the preferred ROI of 10%. For a $50,000 investment, our goal is to sell the property or sell the equity for at least $75,000. And so the math is pretty straightforward. Right? You take 75 minus 50 leaves 25,000. You get the first 5, so that leaves 20,000 to split. My company gets 10, you get another 10, so you wind up getting $15,000 on a $50,000 investment. That is a 30% cash on cash ROI, and that entire process will take about 6 months. From the time we close escrow to the time we sell the property or sell the equity of the property, it's about 6 months. So 30% ROI over 6 months. We recommend, okay, you got 15,000, set that aside, take the 50,000 and do another one. So that you can do 2 of these properties off the same $50,000 in 1 year. You get a 60% annual return and make $30,000 without using any leverage, no loans. Now, I always talk about the worst case. If something happened, we have another 9/11, we have another 2008, and you're not able to sell it for whatever reason, and you have to just hold it and collect the rent, you're going to get at least that 15% cash on cash ROI. Now, we split that, right? You get the first 10%, and then the other 5% above that, we split. You get 2.5, we get 2.5. But that's the worst case scenario. Now you say, Mike, I don't want to wait 6 months, and I don't have $50,000. Or you say, Mike, look, I just want to buy the end product. That's called a retail investor. And they buy the property after it's been rehabbed, after it has a client, and after it has professional property management associated to it. Again, we sell the properties to people within our network for basically 10 times the net operating income. It's called a cap rate. And it's almost the equivalent of a ROI, except cap rate doesn't care about how you buy the property, cash or financing. And if we sell it to somebody outside of our network, we use a 9% cap rate. And so now we sell the property for about $84,000. So you can be a retail investor, and at $75,000 to $84,000, you can get a loan. It'll come out around $25,000, $30,000 out of pocket, and you're still going to make at least a 10% cash on cash return each year. But you say, okay, Mike, I don't have that money, and how can I still participate? Well, this is where you can own part of the equity in a property. And we actually are doing that now with, let me get out of here, with our what's called our McKay property. So this was our first property. We created this turnkey rental property, and this is the actual picture of it is here. We created this property. She bought it in March of 23. We entered into a contract with the Detroit Housing Authority in November of 23 for a tenant that's paying $866 per month. So it was less than the $1,000 a month that we were targeting. She wound up spending like $53,000, so it was a little bit more than the $50,000. Yet her cash on cash ROI is still 15%. This property generates $7,500 a year, and so we're selling 75% of this property now, and we're selling it with a minimum investment of $500, and you become what's called a limited partner, in which you own a fraction of it, but you have no voting rights. You're along for the ride. And we plan to hold on to this property for about 2 years. During that time, you're going to receive your proportionate share of the net operating income on a quarterly basis. It's going to be about an 8.5% return for you. Now, at the end of 2 years, because we have a performing asset, we're now going to value the property at a lower cap rate, 7%, which means now we're going to look at selling the property at over $100,000. I already told you that there are people from the Middle East coming in, spending hundreds of millions of dollars looking for properties like that. There are people here in California that are experienced real estate investors that only earn 4 to 5% ROI on properties here in California. We're going to target them, okay? By selling this property for $108,000 in a couple of years, on the back end, you'll earn another 25%. So let's add it up. So year one is 8.5, year two is 8.5. And then upon the sale, we're projecting 25%. Add all that up, and that's a 43% return over 2 years. So that's over a 20% annual return. You don't have any involvement in the running of the property. You just sit back. Every quarter, you receive your proportionate share. And when we sell it, you receive your proportionate share. And so this is how we allow anybody to come in and to make those double-digit annual returns. And I know that I'm over the time, and so I want to respect people's time. But any final questions?
No, this is an amazing opportunity. I think this is a project. Hopefully you do have some sequels to go with this, because I think this first one, this is going to really blow a lot of people's minds, and even the people that for whatever reason, if they don't invest in the first one, once they talk to some of us that have invested and they see like, hey, we're talking to the guy himself and we're seeing the returns and he's giving us the full breakdown, and this is the real deal. I think even more investors and even more curious minds are going to come to the company's way. So this really seems like a great opportunity. I also wanted to ask you too, I was surfing on your website, and I saw the referral program. So could you give a little bit of light to the referral program so that, I'm taking notes as we going, but I wanted to ask about that and how that dynamic works.
Sure. So the BNIC Network is actually a parent company to an investment club network. Okay. And the whole premise is to practice cooperative group economics. Okay. And so some will call it crowdfunding. Some will call it a susu, if you know what that is in African and Caribbean circles of families putting their money together and lending it to one family. They go do what they're going to do with it, make money, come back, replenish, and the money circulates, right? So it's the same type of concept. And so we have established a residual referral program. And it goes like this. If you refer a person who becomes an investor with us, every time that they make profit, you make an amount equal to 10% of the profit that they make. Right? So that's the easy part. If you refer somebody, they become a client of ours, and then they earn profit, whether it's because they're a traditional investor and they, again, are earning that $15,000 per house, or there's other investment opportunities that we have within our network of investment clubs. Whenever they earn profit, you earn a referral equal to 10% of the profit. So they make 15,000, you make 1,500, right? And so that's the quick and easy explanation. It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme, because all it is the way we distribute the profit. So when we distribute $15,000 of profit to the investor, and we get $10,000 of profit, that's $25,000. In reality, we've made about $28,000 in profit, because we take a percentage of the profit off of the top to go into the residual program. Okay, so unlike other multi-level marketing organizations where you got to keep getting people in, right? And the people have to pay a fee in order to get into the network. And we don't. All of our investment clubs are free to join. There's nothing like that. It is strictly how we distribute profit. And again, it goes back to the concept of cooperative group economics. Now, the second thing is specifically if you refer somebody that becomes a traditional investor and they invest that $50,000. When they sell the property and, hey, they made 15,000, I just made 1,500. Well, you saw, we made 10,000. Whatever amount that we make, you get a third of that. So if we made 10,000, you're about to get another $3,333 on top of your 1,500. Okay?
Nice.
So we believe that's a great incentive to spread the word.
No, it's
right?
nice. Yeah.
And this is in the word residual is in there, because as long as the client is a client of ours, and as long as they make profit, we will continue to give you your residual distribution. Okay. So what's the criteria? So the number one criteria, you got to be a member of one of our investment clubs. It doesn't take anything to join. You don't have to pay any fees, but there is a requirement to contribute at least $120 a year to your contribution account. Now, on day one, you can put $120 in there, and on day two, you can take the $120 back out, right? That money in your contribution account is always yours until you choose to invest in something, right? The reason why we do that is because we're creating this new type of legal structure called a closed private crowdfunding network. And it's a network of interrelated investment clubs. Investment clubs are not regulated by the SEC. So this entire structure is not regulated by the SEC. Okay. But we anticipate that the SEC will come and say, hey, y'all are violating our rules and regulations. And our attorneys will be like, nope, we're not, because your rules and regulations clearly state that investment clubs, as long as they have no more than 100 members, no more than $5 million assets under management, all active members, and a strong educational component, you don't regulate them. And so this is just a collection of investment clubs. This current structure does not exist in the United States. Okay. And so in preparation for the SEC to come and say, hey, you're, doing things and breaking our rules, everybody needs to be a member of the investment club, and we make it very easy to become a member. And we have to show your intent of being an active member by that, again, that contribution, but you can always take the contribution back out. You don't have to keep it there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're at the very beginning of that, though, but we expect that to really ramp up near the end of this year, right? Because we've got our first property, we can show the success story, and we show how our investor, instead of selling the property, she's selling 90% of the equity. So that's how she makes her profit. She retains 10% ownership, and so she continues to get cash flow, and she still has 100% control over the property. And so and because of time, I won't show you this time, but I will show you how with a single $50,000 investment and reinvesting the profits, how your 50,000 can literally grow to $1 million in less than 10 years. And you'll have over 100 properties that you own with one single $50,000 investment.
Wow.
This is how we create generational wealth.
When are you going to show that, Mike?
Right, yeah. So because it's I'll actually show it. I'll show it now because it's just the two of you guys here. Give me a minute. Let me find it. This is the wrong. Yeah, it's all it is math, right? It is the principle of compound interest. And we don't even add leverage. And leverage is stronger than compounding interest. But here, I'll show you on the screen. So this is the scenario that we've been talking about, right? $50,000, 6 months for the deal, $1,000 rent, $7,500 in annual NOI. Here's your gross profit. Here's the net profit that you keep. This is the flipping scenario, okay? Just on the flipping scenario, this looks at each year and how much money you have at the end. At the end of year 5, you'd have $400,000, okay? At the end of year 10, you'd have over 4 million. And it's all because of exponential growth. It's reinvesting the profits, because here you got enough money to flip one house this year, but here you can do 2 houses. Here you do 3 houses, here you do 5. So the number of houses that you do increases exponentially. Okay.
Wow.
Now, if you just rent the house, you can see it's the slow road to China. At the end of 10 years, you got 2 houses and you got $47,500. All right. That's a slow. Well, here's another road where you sell 90% of the equity. And so what happens is you accumulate houses along the way and you accumulate cash. So it's the combination of these two. Because in the end, when you're flipping houses, at the end, you don't own any houses. You own cash, but you don't own any houses. Here, and I use the 5-year example, 410,000, you will have flipped 10 houses that year. But at the end of the year, you won't own any houses. Here, you will own 15 houses and you will have $268,000 in cash. Year 8 is where you turn that 50,000 into $1 million. In year 10, it's $2.5 million.
Wow.
And all it is discipline.
It doesn't even feel real. Like,
Hey, this is so Einstein said the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Okay. If you take a penny and you double it each day, in 30 days, you'll have more than $1 million. It's just exponential growth. It's 100% math. That's all it is, right? But you got to have some discipline, because if at the end of the year you got $80,000, and I'm telling you, all right, let's use 50 to go flip another house, put that 30 to the side, you may be tempted to like, damn, I'm gonna take $5,000 out. I'm gonna go buy something.
Yeah.
Okay. And I actually have, if you become a member of the investment club, there's an educational series of modules. And there's the first 3 modules you have to view before I will allow you to invest any money into our investment opportunities as an investment club member. The first one is what is financial independence? And we define that as having enough income producing assets that generate enough monthly cash flow so that you can afford to live the way you want without having to work. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Everybody has a financial independence number. It's based on how you want to live, which is how much money you're going to spend each year and what your risk tolerance is. Okay. And we show you how to calculate that financial independence number. Once you know, and it's how much income producing assets do you need? Now that you know the destination, there are an infinite number of roads to get to the destination, but they are all based on 3 principles. How much money per year are you going to invest? How many years are you going to invest? And what return of investment are you going to receive during those years? If you change 2 of those variables, the third one automatically calculates itself. And so we help each person develop their own plan. And the beautiful thing is over time, your plan may change, right? But some people will look and say, well, Mike, I'm only able to do $1,000 per year, and I need to get up to $250,000. It says that at a 10% ROI, it'll take me 20 years, right? In fact, I will pull that up so you can see what that tool looks like, because it's a fascinating tool. Where are we at? Financial independence workshops. Here we go.
Mike, can I have this Excel sheet too?
So
Might be confidential.
yeah, so I can send you the PDF. I cannot send you the actual Excel with all the equations and stuff like
That's
that.
totally fine. That is totally fine. I just want to see numbers. I don't, yeah, that's fine.
All right. So this here is how we build a plan. So let's just say that we need to get to 750,000. Okay, so that's 750,000 is the number that we need to get to. And based on our risk tolerance, we're looking at only a 10% increase per year. Well, what this says is, well, you need to invest $21,000 a year. Okay. Or, and this is if you're starting fresh, you ain't got no money, nothing saved yet. Over here, it says, hey, if you, and you say, Mike, I only got, I can only do $5,000 a year. Well, at 10%, it's going to take you 28 years. All it is math. Over here, it says, well, if I got 5,000, but I want to do this in 15 years, Mike, well, you need to get a 25% annual asset ROI. Well, I just showed you one technique where you can get a 30% cash on cash ROI over 6 months. So what happens if you want to do it in 10 years? Oh, you need to get 47. Well, I showed you that as long as you keep rolling over your money, you can get a 60% cash on cash ROI per year. Now, the thing is this, before this presentation, before I showed you how you can get a 30% cash on cash ROI by flipping turnkey rental properties in Detroit, what were, did you, if I would have just started off and said, hey, I'm going to show you how you can make, 60% per year annual return, what would you guys have thought about that in that statement?
Oh, that's a good question.
See?
with those type of numbers, so do you mean like what's the first thing that would come to our mind? Like what's the first?
Yeah.
I would say,
Without me telling you how, I just tell you, hey, did you know through real estate, I can make sure you get at least a 60% cash on cash return per year.
oh man. Ooh.
Janice, what would have been the first thing that would have came to your mind?
I don't know, like this is new to me. Like the only thing I know is like flipping houses. But I don't. Obviously, that's not good. That's not going to work.
I would say something with commercial. I would say something probably with commercial real estate, something that's like in a really big metropolitan area, or something that's real like near something that's very high value, something like and like you said in the big LA Hollywood area, or
Mhm.
Dallas, Houston, somewhere commercial, like something like really big with commercial property, even in New York City, Manhattan, like something like that.
Right. But you have never imagined that by building affordable housing in Detroit, that you'd be able to get these type of returns. And the whole thing is about low risk, right?
Yeah.
Because the very worst case scenario is you can't sell the property and you got to hold on to it and you got to make 15%.
That's the best. That's a nice worst risk.
Right. And so and so when I help people develop their plans and I show them, because the first thing I ask you is, what's your risk tolerance from 0 to whenever I get my paycheck, I put it under the mattress because I don't trust nobody, including banks. 100 being every time I get my check, I go straight to the casino because I'm trying to double my money that day. Okay. And so I'll ask both of you guys on that scale, 0 to 100, what is your, and let me put in context. Okay, you work, so you have income coming in. Out of that income, you pay bills, and then you have disposable income. You use part of that disposable income to invest. Okay, so the question is, what's your risk tolerance when it comes to investing that disposable income and your risk of losing it all? And then you have to start over, right? It doesn't, you ain't gonna be homeless or nothing like that because you got a job and this is disposable income. And so look at the risk from that perspective. Hey, if I invest this stuff and I lose it, I got to start over. So what's my risk tolerance for my disposable income?
Oh, that's a good question. Risk tolerance for this.
Janice, do you have a number 0 to 100?
Well, I could tell you, I'm not going to go to the casino with it. I can tell you that.
I would probably, I would probably say like if 100 is like, hey, I'm gonna go splurge on things that are liabilities, I would say probably like a 50. I
Okay.
would say something,
If-
yeah, I would say
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
40, 45, 50, because, now I'm at a place, these last couple of years learning about investing in general, learning about the assets versus liabilities and just getting my financial literacy, like, accumulating that knowledge. Like now I'm more cognizant of like, okay, you make this amount of money, but I'm always looking for ways to increase my assets. Kind of like how Warren Buffett or Robert Kiyosaki talks about, like, look for ways to continue to generate more assets, whether it's
Mhm.
different stocks, bonds, real estate. But I'm always looking for assets. So my risk tolerance would probably be at that 45 to 50 because I'm always thinking, like my brain's always working, like how can I add additional streams of income?
Right, exactly. Multiple streams of income, and you
Mhm.
want income producing assets.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Actually, so look, and there are two types of assets, or assets fall into two categories. So one is appreciating assets, buy low, sell high. The other is cash flowing assets. You own the asset, it generates a certain cash flow per day, month, quarter, or year. Okay. Real estate, according to what you buy, can fall into both of those categories, right? And the best one is, here's a cash flowing asset that is also appreciating in value, right? And so that's what we have in Detroit. And so the reason why I ask people's risk tolerance is because whatever that number is, let's say it's 50, I tell them take that number, divide it by 5, and so you'll have 10, and that's your target ROI while you're working is 10%. Okay. And it's just a rough calculation, because now if you say, well, Mike, in order to live the lifestyle that I want to live comfortably, I need $100,000 a year. Well, you take 100,000 and you divide it by your the ROI that you need to get 10%, means that you need $1 million worth of assets. Okay. And so that then becomes your financial independence number. And now we just work on, okay, what are the ways to get there? And now you have your plan. That's module 1. Module 2 is self-discipline, because I can help anybody come up with a financial independence plan, but if you don't have the self-discipline to stick to it, you just wasted both our time.
True.
Does that mean like a mentorship or something?
So going to that module, it talks about how do you create that self-discipline. And so it talks about how do you form new habits? How do you break old habits? The importance of a support group. If you want to lose weight, you're going to go to the gym, and you may find a support group at the gym where you guys hold each other accountable for going to the gym, and then while you're at the gym doing certain things, right? The investment club is your financial support group, right? Um, and then we even talk about the power of manifestation. You have to believe it,
Yeah.
and then you have to act as if it's so. But you got to have that discipline. It takes 21 days to develop a new habit of doing it daily.
Yeah.
Right? You got to reprogram the subconscious, right? So if you are used to going out and getting that latte at Starbucks every morning and spending $5 to $7, and now you say, nope, I'm going to redirect that so that I can invest that money, you know, into investment opportunities. That's going to take some discipline of breaking that habit and creating the new one, right? So self-discipline. And then the third module, which is by far the most important from the SEC's perspective, is how to evaluate an investment opportunity. Okay. and we go over the risks and the different types of risks. There's probably at least 15 different type of risks associated with any investment opportunity that you need to understand. Now, no risk, no reward. So it doesn't mean I'm only going to invest in things that have no risk. So I'm gonna go out and buy the 2-year T-bill, the 2-year bond that's paying 5%. I'm gonna go put my money in the bank and get a 5-year CD, right? That's zero risk. What we teach you is understand the risk, and now how do you manage and shift the risk? That's the important thing. Not avoiding it, but managing risk and shifting risk. Insurance is the number one way that you shift risk, right? You pay a premium to shift that risk to the insurance company, so that if the house burns down, oh, here comes the insurance money, right?
Yeah.
And there's but you pay a premium for that. As long as you understand the cost and the way of shifting, and it goes into the model in order to calculate, how much money am I going to make? That's how you do it. Now, at the end of each module, there's a test. The first 2 are real simple. The third one, definitely test your knowledge to see if you was paying attention. You got to get at least a 70% to pass. Once you pass that, we now label you as a sophisticated investor. That is an SEC term. It means an investor who has the education or experience to understand the risk associated with an investment. Okay. And the reason why the label of sophisticated investor is important is because that's how non-accredited investors are able to participate in our investment opportunities, which are private placement opportunities, with only within the club, right? And so it's a defense tactic when the SEC comes and says, "Hey, y'all got all these people up in here and y'all raising millions of dollars and no, you guys can't be doing that. Don't violate. Nope, no, we're not. This is a new type of legal structure, Your Honor. It doesn't exist, and the SEC rules currently state that they're not responsible for overseeing this. And so we'll have that structure until they change the rules, because they'll definitely change the rules."
Nice. That's awesome. And for the investment club, are you pretty much taking on one project at a time, or do you guys do multiple projects just depending on what comes across the table, or if something's too good to pass up? How does that dynamic work?
Yeah. So as the parent investment club, the BNIC network, it is developing systems for identifying appropriate investment opportunities, because it's all about low risk, high returns. And then we go through a process. Right? I have a system for building systems, and so we go through that process of doing it on paper, doing it in Excel, doing the back testing. Now let's do one in real life and see how we need to adjust the model. And then once we get through that whole one, now let's do multiple ones simultaneously. And then it's off to the races, right? And so, for example, with the Detroit model, we're almost, once we raise the $75,000, we will have proven this concept of, hey, you invest $50,000 and you get a tenant in there and you generate at least $7,500 in net operating income. Now the value of the property is at least 84. You can sell 75,000 and you're going to make your 30%. And this is the process, right? And there's demand for the securities that we're selling, right? The next thing is using leverage. And so we're in the process of creating our own internal lending company because your regular financial institution is not going to lend you $45,000 to go buy a $50,000 property. Okay, hard money lenders aren't going to do that. Nobody, there's not a market there. So that's actually an opportunity. And so we're creating our own lending company that will loan $45,000 to the traditional investor. So now the traditional investor only needs to come in with $5,000. And here's what the numbers look like now. So still $50,000 investment, still create the turnkey rental property that generates $7,500 a year, still looking to sell for at least $75,000. So, but now you got that $25,000 profit. Well, you got some holding costs in there and some financing costs. So let's say that's $5,000 to borrow $45,000. Now your profit is $20,000. Well, what we do is we now increase your preferred rate from 10% to 25%. So off your $5,000 investment, you're going to get 100% up to 25% of what you invested. So 25% of 5,000 is $1,250. So you get the first $1,250 of the 20,000, and then the remaining amount of 18,750. We divide that by 2. So now you get another, $900, $375 added on to your $1,250. So it comes out to be over $10,000 if my math is right. Well, you only put in 5. So we just turned your 5 into 10.
Yeah, doubled it.
We just doubled your money in 6 months. So if you had $50,000 and you're willing to do 1, now you can do 10 simultaneously.
Wow.
So now you turn your 10 into 100,000 in 6 months.
No, that's powerful.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
See, that's the power of leverage.
And I kind of now with your breakdown, because you have a way of speaking and like simplifying things for everybody to understand. But now I can kind of see how the men and women that are playing this real estate game with millions of dollars, how they're turning millions into billions because of that technique and understanding, like leveraging other people's money or leveraging, what you have. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense now.
Exactly. And then and again, we're about risk, right? So the question is, well, Mike, what happens if something happens in the market? Because when we talk about risk, market risk is huge because you don't control market risk, right? Well, what happens if we're not able to sell? Okay. Well, we set it up to where there's already a buyer. There's a buyer that will make sure you get your 25%. And here's how that works. So you got $45,000 worth of loans. Well, these are a new type of loan. These are 30-year fixed rate, assumable hard money loans, right? They're 10 and 12%, but they're 30-year and they're fixed and they're assumable, so they move with the property. I really don't, I don't care what nobody's credit score is, because as long as you got $5,000, you can get a loan because the loan is tied to the property. It's kind of like what they call a DSCR loan, which is all based on income of the property, right? And so when you sell this property, what you are doing is you are selling it to a buyer who's assuming the loans. They're reimbursing you for your $5,000, plus they're paying you your 25%, $1,250. So worst case, you're gonna make 25% in 6 months, worst case. Now, from the buyer's perspective, they're out of pocket the 5,000 plus the 1,250, so $6,250. But they're generating $7,500 a year in net operating income. So they're still making over a 10% cash on cash return, and they still have the 10% preferred rate. So there are multiple investors involved in every single property. There's actually 4. There's 2 that fund the loans. There's the equity investor that's part of the flip company, right? That puts up the 5,000. And then there's the buy and hold investor who puts up $6,250. So according to your risk tolerance, you can take any of these different positions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. That is, yeah, that is the power of leverage and the power of just understanding the nuts and bolts of how it's working and the risk management. I think that's such a it makes things very inclusive. It makes things very inclusive for everybody's pockets. You know, for everybody's able to afford different to invest comfortably in a different amount. But this concept definitely makes it like all inclusive. Like, and I think that is where you're going to get a lot more investors and a lot more curiosity, because you're going to have people coming from all walks of life and all different financial capacities. So.
Yeah, it's all about cooperative group economics, right? There's enough meat on the bone for everybody to eat.
Yes. Umoja, as they say.
Yeah, there you go. Talking the Kwanzaa principles.
Oh yeah.
Janice, I know that we've thrown a lot of information at you.
Yeah, you did.
But I will be sending you guys out, the presentations I went through in PDF forms so that you have information to reference. In that email, there'll be the link if you want to schedule a one-to-one Zoom meeting with me to ask any questions that you have.
Okay.
And remember, I'm doing these webinars every Sunday, and each webinar is different based on the audience, right?
Oh,
So you guys are always free to come back at any time.
okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That'll be like a good exposure for me to like repeat information, sort of like drill in my head better.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I know we've gone way over our time, but I really appreciate you guys attending and appreciate you guys sticking it out. And I look forward to talking to both of y'all more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for the breakdown. You made everything a lot more simpler in the way that you explained it. So that's definitely a gift. So I appreciate that much.
And Greg, Janet has put the contact of the land banking company
Okay, awesome.
before we
Yeah,
close out.
thank you. Yeah, I put it in there. So if you want to contact the guy that helped me, it's better to talk to him. The website's not that great. It's not very user friendly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good
You're
night.
very welcome. Greg, you got the information from the chat before we close out?
Yes, yeah. I took a screenshot. I'm good to go.
All right. Well, look, you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Stay blessed and stay safe, and we'll be talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Mike, can we stay a little bit over?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Appreciate it.
So, Stephen, go ahead and stop recording.